Hey everyone, it is Tanya. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new here. Today I'm back with another speed build, and this is going to be a fairly spacious family home in a Dutch colonial style. And I am building this in the world of Brindleton Bay, which is the world that comes with the Cats and Dogs expansion pack. It's just been a little while since I built a bigger family home, and this is a little bit of a comfort zone build for me, as Dutch colonials are actually really common in New England, which is where I'm from and where Brindleton Bay is inspired by. So that's what we're going to be doing here today, and I really hope you'll enjoy this one. If you do and you'd like to download it, it will be available on the Sims 4 gallery. You can find it under my EA ID, which is Gryphi, Gryphi. You could also find it under the hashtag Gryphi, and that information will be in the description down below as well. I also wanted to let you know that I still have a creator code with EA, so if you're buying any Sims packs on the EA app, you can enter my code Gryphi at checkout to support me as a creator. Thank you so much for considering, and thanks to EA for sponsoring this portion of the video. So something I really wanted to make sure I had on this build was this particular roof style where it is kind of like rounded on the ends or curved upward, and I also decided to go with a symmetrical look for this one, which is very common in Dutch colonial builds. It's not what I was going for at first, but I did decide to have the front very symmetrical, and I will be adding a garage over to one side, but the base structure is the same on both sides. And then I decided to add a chimney over here, and then I decided it would be better for the top floor to be medium wall height, so I'm adjusting the roof accordingly, and I think it really helped with the look of this home. The proportions just felt a little bit off before I did that, but it ended up looking better on the outside this way. However, when I got inside upstairs, everything felt so tall, but I figured it out the best I could. Anyway, right now I am figuring out which roof texture I want to put on the build, and then gonna be playing around with windows and adding a garage and all of that, and also picking out our roof trim here, which I'm gonna be changing later on because it ends up clipping into the house. It's a little bit of a thicker roof trim, and that's something I wasn't thinking about when I picked it right now. So you will see I pick a smaller one later on, and then I decided to go with these windows here from Cottage Living. I think they look so nice on this build. I love the giant shutters in the front and these open windows as well. So just grabbing a variety of those. I have the like half windows or like one side shutter windows on the bottom and some bigger ones on top, and I played around with colors quite a bit on this build. I was originally thinking it was going to be a white house with these blue shutters, and then it turns into a blue house with white shutters, and then I think I finally settle on blue with blue, and I really like that. It's pretty common for this style of house to be more of like a nautical color scheme, and that's not really what I was going for. Like, I didn't put like beach things and anchors everywhere. However, I did lean into the blue and like beige and white color scheme a bit in here, and I think it looks really cozy. Anyway, here I am adding the garage. I end up using this door from Snowy Escape. I think it works really nice as a garage door, and I put a couple of base game windows above it. And then we have another side entrance over here, which leads you into a sort of hallway room that connects the garage to the main part of the house. So you'll see that when we get inside. I'm just getting some steps up to the front porch and the side porch, as well as figuring out what flooring I want to use for the walkway up to the front, as well as the driveway. And for the family in this house, I was thinking there were 2 parents here, and then there are 3 kids and some combination of cats and dogs. That is up to you. I did put things you would need for both cats and dogs in this house. I tend to like to do that in builds in this world because there's so many cats and dogs everywhere, and it just feels familiar to me as somebody who grew up in New England with so many pets. So there is plenty of things for them, and I am just working on the landscaping, which is one of my favorite things to do. I really love landscaping in this game. I think it is so fun figuring out like what plants and flowers to put around, and I definitely went with something a little bit more structured for this build. So there are these dedicated flower gardens in the front with a mixture of bushes and hydrangeas, a couple of low-lying plants as well, and then there's this one from Cats and Dogs I'm placing down quite a few of here. I never remember what it's called, but it's really pretty. Also, I am doing terrain paint here, but it is going to disappear. Unfortunately, 10 years into this game, we still have the terrain disappearing bug. It's frustrating, but I just wanted to mention it, so it will disappear at some point, and I'm going to redo it towards the end of the build, which is unfortunate because I feel like it looked better the first time, and that's just kind of what happens sometimes. So anyway, I do have another porch out here that you can walk through either side of there to get to the front or the back, and then I'm figuring out what back door and getting rid of some of these interior walls so I can start figuring out a floor plan And I wanted to have a porch in here to lead you down into the garage since I wanted that to be on the bottom floor, but I wanted the rest of it to be up on a platform so that there are stairs leading into the house. So this was the best I could do for that. And I thought it worked out pretty nicely. And then I think the next thing we're going to be doing is figuring out the stair placement. Oh, I started by putting down a couch. I was like, okay, maybe the living room goes over here. How do I figure this out? Because I really wanted the chimney to actually be where the fireplace was on the inside. And it's not exactly, but it's close to where it is. And I was pretty pleased with that. I ended up putting a bathroom where it actually is. And then the fireplace is actually sort of like on a slant right there. And then you enter in and into this hallway where the staircase is. And then down the hall here, we have a office and a bathroom, and then the entry to the garage. And in the back, we have a very large kitchen with a breakfast nook and a separate dining room that's a little bit on the small side, but there are so many places to eat in this house. I feel like it's completely fine. And then all of the bedrooms are going to be upstairs. There are 3 bedrooms up there and 2 bathrooms, one being like the hall bath for the kids, and the other being an ensuite for the primary bedroom. And of course, in the kitchen, I did have to use this new base game counter set. I am so in love with this one. I think it is so beautiful, and I feel like I'm never going to get over it. It's just so nice to have something new like this in the base game. So that ends up working nicely in there. We'll go back to that a little bit later, but this is going to be where the primary bedroom is with a very small ensuite off of it. And the furniture I'm placing down now is just placeholders to be like, oh, this is a bedroom, this is a bathroom, so I don't accidentally decorate it. Not how I intended to, so I just ended up grabbing some random beds and stuff to place down. And then I changed the railing on the upstairs so many times and the flooring, and it took a while, but it's a very light flooring that I have throughout the space, which is not one I go for very often because I feel like it's easy for the space to feel very washed out. And I guess you could probably argue it kind of is. But I was going for like a cozy beach vibe, sort of, even though I kind of said I wasn't going for that in the beginning because I don't think it looks beachy, but it's those colors. It's definitely like sandy colors and blues, but I wasn't going for beachy decor. I don't know if that makes sense, but you'll see when we get inside. Anyway, out here, I did add a basketball hoop over the garage, a couple of bikes, a place to do some hopscotch, and I used a lot of those wall lanterns outside as well to make sure that the lighting is decent at nighttime. And then I really wanted the bottom of these columns to have more depth to them, so I added some of these debug stone pieces to the bottom and lowered those with tulle. And then over at the end of the walkway, there is a mailbox and a couple of planters. I always think it looks so welcoming and pretty when there are flowers around a mailbox, so I just wanted to make sure to include that on this one. And those debug planters are from High School Years. High School Years actually has a lot of really nice debug or show live edit objects items. There's so many different planters, there's some pretty flowers, and I'm very familiar with that one because I worked on High School Years when that came out. So I was digging through debug like way before that pack was even announced. So I'm like overly familiar with it. Unfortunately, like when you build for a pack, you're not allowed to use those items. So I now use them a lot and I really like them. Anyway, now I am starting to paint the outside of the house a blue color and working on the backyard layout. I wanted to make sure there was plenty of like seating area out here, but also some flower beds and a like grilling space. This is not a yard I end up putting a pool in, but there ends up being lots of places to sit. There's some couches, there's a table and chairs, there is like a full outdoor kitchen, and then I have some activities for kids and some gardening opportunities as well. So I do end up placing down a swing set, which we have quite a few of now. I remember back in the day when the only one we had was from Seasons, and I would get so tired of it because it was just the same always. And I believe the one I'm using here is from Growing Together. I love the string lights and the little flags on it. I think it is so cute. And then over here I have a table from Seasons that is for flower arranging, and I placed down quite a few planters. I don't end up keeping the vertical planters. I end up putting some other decorations over there, but for right now there's vertical planters, and I also really enjoyed all of the grass pieces I placed on the ground to make it feel like the floor is not just flat. Unfortunately, it is, but I do like the look of adding additional pieces. So this is that other thing that I added. It looks like it's another flower arranging table, but it's not functional. It's just decorative, and that one's from Eco Lifestyle. So I placed that down over here. I also got some more flowers up on that little porch space. And then this little chalk piece is actually to play marbles. That also came with, actually not also, that and the hopscotch out front are from For Rent. Anyway, here are all of the little couches and chairs that I placed down. These ones I believe are from the backyard or perfect patio stuff packs. And then there's this little table. I put a couple of umbrellas out here, and I just think it looks like such a nice cozy space, and I definitely leaned into the blue and the white out here. It's very nautical looking, but the inside is not like this, and I feel like this is the only area that kind of feels like that. But I felt like it made sense for the area. And then, of course, just getting some more flowers, a couple more planters up here, and I believe I also get a rocking chair on the back porch. I do. I think that looks really nice. And then here is that outdoor kitchen space. I just have the grill and a couple of those side tables from the Desert Luxe kit, I'm pretty sure. And I put some like paper plates and some different tools you use on the grill. And then I decided last minute that I wanted to change the color of the flower boxes to be white flowers instead of yellow. I think it worked a lot better. And now we are back inside working on the kitchen. And I ended up using the new subway tiles as well in here in a white swatch and bringing in all sorts of clutter, my cutting boards, some sunflowers, and I will actually be moving some of this stuff a little bit later because I wasn't thinking about the fact that pretty much all of the counter spaces have items on them, and so your Sims weren't going to be able to prep food anywhere, but I do fix that a little bit later. It was just a little oversight at the time. And then over in this corner is going to be where our dining space is, or I guess our breakfast nook, because there is a proper dining room in here. I did use this table from Jungle Adventure over here. I think it's really pretty, and I paired it with some chairs from Cats and Dogs. And I used a very similar like color scheme or style of both of those things for the dining room, but it's not the same items. I really wanted them to feel similar but different. I'm not sure how many people have like the same table and chairs in both rooms if they have space, because that feels a little bit redundant. So I wanted them to be a little bit different. And then over on the wall over here leading into the dining space, I do have a small bench, which I think is really cute. I put a couple of cushions on it and have a beautiful painting above it from Cats and Dogs. And I thought that these curtains were perfect for this space. I tend to, in a lot of builds that are in Brindleton Bay, overuse these curtains, or if I'm building a house that's supposed to be like a grandparent's house, they just feel so comforting and nostalgic, so I do really enjoy them. And then we will be working on the living room, which has a diagonal wall in it, and at first I thought that's where I was going to put the fireplace, but I ended up swapping it to a different wall because the layout was just a little bit weird, and I'm glad that I did that. And I also decided to use some more modern couches in here than I originally was thinking, and the ones I'm using are from the Refined Living Room kit. I really like these ones. They're very simple and boxy, but I feel like you can dress them up with pillows and other accessories, and I'm glad that they actually come in a love seat, a 3-seater, and a chair. I didn't use the chair in here, but it is nice to have that as well. I thought I was going to use the navy blue swatch on these couches, but I did end up going with the beige in the end, which I thought was perfect. And then I'm trying to figure out what sort of art I want to have on the walls. I did try this gallery piece, I believe is from Love Struck, which is really cute, but I didn't end up keeping it there. I ended up sort of making my own and playing around with a few different options. Although actually, I think on this wall, yeah, I did keep a pre-made gallery wall, which is one of my favorite ones. I want to say it's from Movie Hangout. I might be wrong on that, but it's such a beautiful one. I really, really enjoyed that. And then I also got a space to hang up some family portraits, adding some pillows that I had mentioned I was going to do. And there's a small bookcase in this room as well, which is one of the base game ones that's an unlockable. It just fit really nice into the area I had in mind. And I also wanted to add a toy box because I knew I wanted to have kids in this house. Anyway, we are moving on into the dining room now, and you can see what I mean, where this is a similar style of chair, but they're a little bit more simple and modern. These ones are from Cozy Kitsch. And I loved the dark blue on the chairs. I thought it was so pretty. And I paired it with this really gorgeous hutch from, I believe, Cottage Living. And I just got a couple of other decorations in here. There's an extra chair if you want to pull that up. I have some artwork on the walls. I believe I get some like plates and similar clutter over on the hutch. And of course, a plant in the corner. I don't actually end up keeping this plate, but I do get a casserole dish, or a casserole. I don't know why I said roll. A casserole dish that I tuck in there, which I believe is from the Country Kitchen kit, and a little lantern over here as well, which I think looks really cute. And then over on this side, I do make a little bit of a gallery wall with a clock and a couple of other items. And I love that corner shelf from Cats and Dogs. It is very nautical, I guess, because it has a boat and stuff. That's just kind of how Cats and Dogs is. I just didn't want it to be like I have anchors and steering wheels everywhere. The like boat steering wheels, what are those called? I can't think of what they're called. They might just be called steering wheels. But anyway, there's kind of like a mixture of styles in here. I definitely have some more modern elements. I feel like this is just a very popular style in real life of like mixing styles. And so I did want to lean into that. I did have a lot of these Tiffany lamps around though, because they are something that came with cats and dogs and feel very nostalgic to me for this sort of area. So they are all over the house. I also used a lot of this vertical paneling in a navy blue color. I think it is so pretty. And I just got a small ottoman under the entryway table, as well as a burglar alarm and all of that. And then in our hallway over here, I'm grabbing this runner rug from, I believe Vampires is the one I'm using. There's also one from Realm of Magic. It just didn't have the right vibe or color that I wanted, so I ended up going with this. And I have a few tall cabinets in the hallway to act as additional storage. It's not functionally storage for your Sims, but it looks like it, and it was a nice way to fill up that hallway space. And then we're going to be moving on into the office in here. I'm using the same chair that I used in the dining room and pairing it with this beautiful desk from Cats and Dogs. And I love the gallery wall I put up above the desk. There is some really pretty artwork from the pack, as well as a bunch of like diplomas and awards and a cork board. It feels like a very realistic desk setup to me, where you have like your achievements, you have some personal knickknacks that you really enjoy, and you have the practical side of things where you can hang up like your calendar or your to-do list. I also have another Tiffany lamp in here. We have some additional storage with this little filing cabinet, which is from Get to Work. I think it's a fun piece. I don't use it very often. And then I have a really pretty bookcase over here as well, and some more artwork, a nice reading chair, and I also really enjoyed this piece of wall art, or I guess it's in the wall art section. It's a couple of little frames and a fishing rod. I just thought it made a lot of sense that a Sim that lives in this area might be really into fishing. It's right on the water. And then in our little like walk-through hallway I had mentioned before that connects you to the garage space and also to the front and backyards, I have a space to hang up some dog leashes. There's also some extra food storage in here. And at this point, I realized I didn't add any dog treats in the kitchen, so I really wanted to do that. And I moved the utensils so that they are not blocking the counter from being used. So it was good that I remembered to add dog treats, because it made it so your kitchen is functional. Sometimes there's like little oversights like that I don't even realize. But anyway, finishing up that little room, I just have a shelf with some storage, and then we're moving on into the garage. I ended up using this base game counter that got a Swatch update recently to have like a concrete or stone texture, which I thought was really nice for this space. And I included a washer and dryer in here so you can do your laundry in the, I wanted to call it a basement. This is not a basement. This is a garage. We don't have cars in the game, but garage. Oh, speaking of which, isn't there supposed to be a kit coming out in the beginning of next month that's like a workshop kit of some sort? And it kind of, to me, sounds like garage kit, but we don't have cars, so I don't really understand what that's supposed to be. I'm very curious. Anyway, I did add a couple of litter boxes in here for your cats. There's storage for bikes. I have the decoration box for your holidays. And then we are working on the downstairs bathroom. This is the only one I fully show on camera. I show like the start of the upstairs bathrooms, but it just felt very repetitive, so I didn't keep those in, but you'll be able to see pictures in the screenshots at the end of the video. I did use the same counters that I used in the kitchen, but in this really pretty blue swatch. And then I'm just trying to get some clutter in here, some nice flowers, and I do end up getting rid of the wall lights. I liked the idea of them, it's just the color they were putting off was a little bit weird, so I ended up getting rid of them. And this is just a half bath. It's a sink and a toilet, but the ones upstairs do have a shower, and one of them has a tub. So if you do end up playing in this house and you have a toddler or dog, which I imagine there were dogs in this house, there is a tub to bathe them in. However, most of the bathrooms do not have a tub. Anyway, this is pretty much it for this bathroom, and this is where I'm placing some of the items upstairs, where I'm going to have a tub separate from the shower. This is like the hall bath that all the kids can access, and I have a door leading into the shower from Lovestruck. I think it looks really nice, and I believe you just grab the mirror, and that might be all that I show. Yeah, and then you can see the bathrooms are done. There's an ensuite off of the primary, and for the primary, I did end up using this bed from Cats and Dogs and matching it with those same curtains that I put downstairs. And I did play around with quite a few matching wood tones, or mismatching wood tones, I should say, in this build, because I didn't want everything to match the floor because it's such a light wood tone. I felt like it would be too much of like a washed out look. So I did end up going with a slightly darker wood tone on the bedside tables. It's not dark, but compared to the flooring it is. And then I'm just cluttering those up with like books, places to put your glasses, alarm clocks, all of your basic bedside table things. And I get a piece of artwork up above the bed as well. And I get a beautiful matching dresser. I love this dresser from Cats and Dogs, and I think the blue is so pretty. And I just have to add plants everywhere because I can't help myself. It's The Sims. I love how the plants look. And then on the dresser, I made sure to get a jewelry box up here and a cute little, it's technically a light, but I always use it as more of a figurine or a little statue of a lighthouse. I thought it was really cute. And then there are some frames here. You can put some artwork in, or not artwork, like photos of your Sims families. I like the idea of that. And then I used some cabinetry in this little nook here to make it look like there's a little window seat. So I placed an ottoman through that. And that's really it for this bedroom. And we're going to be heading on into the hallway and then into the other bedrooms. I did think about putting a fish tank up here, which feels very random, but it is something that came with Cats and Dogs. I didn't end up keeping that in the end. I actually ended up using some more of these cabinet pieces to block off this corner, and I put a plant up there. I got a couple more of those lights, and then this bench is there with, I believe, a pillow or two on it and a nice ottoman and just like lots of wall art. I wanted to keep it simple, but I wanted it to look nice. And I think I achieved that, and the mixture of styles where like the artwork up above the bench is a little bit more modern than the bench itself. And then for the bedrooms, I knew one of them I really wanted to use one of the new beds that came in that recent Pride update that we got this past week. So I ended up grabbing this more rainbow swatch for this room, and I really played off of that color, and I think it is so pretty. I really like the items that came with this. I don't think I used any of the other ones in this room. I think it's just this bed, but I did decorate a dorm room using some of the new items. Actually, I think all of the new items, which should be out on the channel probably tomorrow. I just realized I hadn't done a dorm room in a while, and I thought it'd be kind of a fun idea. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be coming soon. But for this room, I just played around with colors. I was thinking that this sim was really into this color scheme, obviously, but I also liked the idea of them being into music. So they do have a guitar in here, and I do end up adding some posters that are like music and guitar related. However, they're not this color scheme, so I do alter the color scheme a little bit, which I think worked out okay. I didn't feel like everything had to stay purple and pink, especially because these posters, like one is bright yellow and one is red. It didn't really match. However, by playing around with the wall colors, I decided to have a green paneling in here, which I thought was so fun. And then the rug in here is like this pinky purple star pattern. It just felt like it tied everything together. Anyway, this is the final bedroom, and I was imagining this one was for two younger Sims who are really into space and robots. And that was obviously inspired by the beds. I don't remember the last time I used any of these like robot pieces. I never use, or like, I want to call them Gundams. I'm not sure if that's the correct term, but that's what I see when I look at those. Anyway, I haven't used these items, and so I thought it would be fun, and then I ended up pairing it with space stuff because we have a lot of space stuff in the game, and I had a blast decorating this room. I have so many toys and clutter. There's like little figurines and art supplies and just all kinds of stuff. There ends up being like shelves above each of the beds with additional things that belong to each of these Sims. And I changed the wallpaper to be this striped wallpaper. I start with just one wall, but I ended up putting it everywhere in the end, which I thought worked really nicely. And it didn't really disrupt what I was doing in the rest of the house because it's the same like skirting board as the rest of the house. So it looks intentional. And then over in this little window space, I just put a bunch more toys up here. There's some pillows and stuffed animals and that little sort of like pirate ship thing made out of a planter and a laundry basket. I thought that was really cool. We have some artwork hanging up here that is all space related. I also grabbed a couple of posters to put up above their bedside tables. And this is where these shelves come into play. And I grab all sorts of clutter up here. I just really went all out, and I'm really pleased with how this room came out. So I really hope you have enjoyed this build because we're just about done here. If you did, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. You can also subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more, and click that bell to be notified when I upload. Also, a massive thank you to my YouTube members for all of your support. If you'd like to become a member yourself, you can click the join button below the video or the link in the description. Just gonna go through and add a couple more pet items around the house, and then we're gonna be heading on into screenshots. So please enjoy those, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye everyone.